All right, and we're back here looking at our play-by-email game against XTRG in WWII Pacific. We are looking at the January 20th turn replay, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see what's going on. I don't have any particular orders that I'm excited about or anything that I'm hoping to see. We do have some light cruisers near Rabaul, but based off what we've seen from the enemy in terms of his task forces and the fact that our light cruisers have been detected, we have ordered them to divert sort of through the gap between the island of New Britain and the New Guinea coast. So hopefully they get out of there okay without too much damage. Meanwhile, you can see here, obviously, whoa, we had a Mark 14 work. Wow. All right, we put a torpedo into a Japanese patrol boat off the coast of Toyohara. But that's a good thing because the patrol boats are actually, generally, I believe, they're converted cargo ships. So if we can sink some of those, that does actually influence his merchant marine, I think. In any event, it doesn't look like heavy damage, so I wonder if the report is accurate, if it really detonated or not. Usually if the ship would sink, you'd hear like a little bit of a bubbling sound and like sound of crew members screaming as they jump into the sea. That kind of ruins the fog of war a little bit, but we didn't see anything there for that. Meanwhile, the Trout is now being depth charged by Japanese destroyers. This is the destroyer that had the successful torpedo strike. But the torpedoes, or the depth charges, appear to be detonating above the submarine. So this goes back to that historical element of submarines for both sides, but especially for the American side, tended to be able to dive far deeper than the Japanese thought they could. And as a result, especially in the early war period, Japanese depth charging was woefully ineffective. Probably more ineffective than the Mark 14 torpedo, believe it or not. Okay. Some good undersea combat today, huh? You know, to be honest, Sergeant, I haven't really looked into the new Ryzen 3000 chips. I'm currently using an Intel i7-4790K, so it's about 4 or 5 years old now. I think I've only had it for 3 or 4 years, but the design is 4 or 5 years old. And I'm still rocking that, and it's doing very well for me. I've considered looking into new chips, but I haven't necessarily looked into it in too much detail. The AMD stuff is certainly interesting, but isn't something that I've, again, gone too far into. Whoa! Depth charge hit on the I-121. It's taking on some water. So we've got I think this is a Dutch or a British frigate, or corvette, off the coast of Sumatra and Java. It's detected the Japanese submarine that it put a torpedo in one of our tankers off Oosthaven. This submarine is very well placed from a strategic perspective because we have all these tankers coming out of Oosthaven, and it looks like our corvette is doing a very good job. I think this is a Flower-class corvette, but I could be wrong. We had 2 of them here. They put 3 depth charges into the I-121. And we got a little bit of a bubbly noise there. I don't know if that's what a submarine sounds like when it sinks or not, but that was pretty exciting. We put 3 hits into it. I don't know if we actually sank it or not. It sounded like... it seemed like it was some pretty good hits, but I'm not sure. Yeah, Mex, the Japanese had depth charges set too high. But actually, interestingly enough... I think the British had a similar issue with the German subs, where they were setting their depth charges early war too high as well. Or maybe it was the Americans. One or the other. Yeah, Sergeant, that's kind of what I did with my... I have an NVIDIA 1080 for my graphics card. I bought it like 3 or 4 months after the 2000 series came out, and I think I got it for $399, which was actually a pretty good price at the time for what I got. So I kind of did that, where it was like, you know, 3rd generation comes out and 2nd generation is much cheaper, such as you were saying for Ryzen. Meanwhile, you can see here the Japanese are bombing Wencao pretty heavily. We're going to go ahead and fast forward through this. You can see here 16 runway hits, 4 airbase hits, 2 airbase hits, 4 supply hits. No actual casualties to the soldiers on the ground there. Meanwhile, the Japanese are now bombing Singkawang. With some Sallies and some Zero escorts. I think we have some Flying Tigers there. 2 raids of Sallies. Looks like they've got 40+ Sallies coming in here. You can see they've damaged 5 H-81A3s. Those are the Flying Tigers, as well as some other aircraft there. So hopefully they didn't do too much damage. Hopefully most of those planes can fly away, but we'll find out soon enough. Looks like he may be finally attacking our flank there. And if he is, then we'll obviously have to adjust some of our strategies. More bombing of Wencao, some casualties, some supply hits, some airbase hits, some runway hits. We don't have any aircraft there, so the runway hits don't mean much, but the supply hits do have the potential to reduce the amount of supply that we have at the base, which could make our forces easier to defeat. So that's something that we need to keep a close eye on, as much as it matters. I mean, I can't really do anything about it. They're already kind of cut off way out there. Moving into the Air Operation PM phase. Some missions canceled due to bad weather over Savi. That's okay, they were just recon missions. Japanese recon over Bataan and China. Recon over Swing Kang, Johor Bahru. Okay, I'm just trying to speed through this a little bit. It seems so far like kind of an anticlimactic turn. Other than those corvettes hitting that Japanese submarine and doing... It looked like we had 3 good solid hits on that sub, so it'd be awesome if we sank it. Japanese bombardment attack at Wencao. This is where they were hitting us with air power. You can see the Japanese actually lost more men than we did in their bombardment attack. It's always good to see the defender lose less than the attacker on bombardment attacks. Meanwhile, a bombardment attack at Changsha. You can see here the Japanese have quite a strong force here. We don't have anything that can stop them in the open field. They have the 32nd Division, the 110th, the 35th, the 17th, the 15th, and the 19th. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full Japanese divisions, and then the 3rd Mixed Brigade and the 5th Engineer Regiment, as well as the 2nd Engineer Regiment. Although it looks like the 2nd there might be battered up a bit because it only has an assault value of 1. Those engineers could play a decisive role in this campaign because Changsha has a level 4 fortification. It's our most heavily fortified city in China. And so if the engineers participate in assaults, they have the ability to reduce the forts and make the Japanese more able to attack us. The Japanese definitely have much more in the way of combat power than us in Changsha, but the one advantage that we do have is that we've got those level 4 forts. The problem is we're on the wrong side of the river, so that could make retreating a little bit difficult, and we've got to make sure we don't let ourselves get flanked, right? The Japanese have a huge force here in Changsha itself, but as XTRG has shown at Luoyang and other potential bases, he may bring a force here, but he's just as apt to slip another sizable force around our flank. Fortunately for us, both of the cities that he could flank us and cut us off with are both on the opposite side of the river, and we still have a road network across the river through friendly territory, even if he cuts this rail line here. So we should still be able to get supply into Changsha if he cuts this railway link here, and if he moves into either of these cities, when you cross a river into a hostile enemy city, the first turn that you cross that river, automatically the game triggers you into a shock attack. So if he doesn't cross with enough men, it could lead to a bloodbath for him, because we still have we still have a reasonable number of troops in both of these cities on the flank, and I believe they're somewhat dug in. Meanwhile, that bombardment attack, he did a little bit of damage, but not much considering the size of the forces there. Looks like he only did a partial bombardment because it only showed 1,600 troops participating and 145 guns. Our defenders had 540 guns and 110,000 troops. So that's a positive, I guess. The Right Honorable William Slim. Slim is such a good nickname. How you doing, Slim? What's up, Slim? It's just a good nickname. All right, so we got some air bases expanding. It looked like actually Nadi Airfield expanded to 2. Pago Pago expanded fortifications to 3. Battleships are beginning refit in Pearl and San Diego, which is interesting because they're also being repaired. So I don't know how that influences anything. Like, can they refit and repair at the same time? I don't really know. But I guess that maybe gets that out of the way for us, because I had switched some of those into refit mode, but they also weren't fully repaired yet, so I'm not sure how that'll work. Meanwhile, I've got some cargo ships arriving, a mine layer arriving in Singapore, some additional squadrons arriving, and some new troops arriving in the eastern U.S. I think most of those are region locked, though. I don't think they're free to move around. Given the name of the turn, the fact that we didn't see the Kirubutai anywhere is a little bit... I don't know if he's like giving something away or not. I mean, he keeps talking about like his carriers going on a rampage in the South Pacific, but I haven't really spotted them in a few turns. These guys... Let's raise them back to Townsville. Can they get back that far? No. Can they get to Port Moresby? Yes. Okay. So these light cruisers made it through the gap here between New Britain and the New Guinea coast. Oh, there's no fuel there. Well, what is that? What good does that do us? No fuel. What on earth are we doing over there? What about at Cooktown? Can we race over there? Almost, but not quite. We're going to take a huge system penalty. I mean, it could slow him down. I'm just worried about if he's got, like, other shit that we need to be mindful of. I guess we'll slow him down and we'll just have him head back to Cairns. But again, if he's talking about the Coral Sea, like, does that mean his carriers are in here or what? I don't really know what that means. Or if he's just getting in our head. Oh boy. Meanwhile, it looks like the Japanese soldiers have arrived at Nomaya. So there are, what here? There are 9 enemy units at Nomaya. Our forces there do have supply. We also have, what is level 2 fortifications? So we have level 2 fortifications. We're almost to level 3, so if he doesn't attack this turn, we'll probably get to level 3 fortifications, which will help in holding against the Japanese. But we don't have very strong forces here. So in terms of our Nomaya forces, we have 177 assault value. In terms of troops here, it's the 4th Australian Brigade, which is made up of militia. We have the 39th Australian Battalion, which has regular infantry units, which is actually a much stronger... This 39th Infantry Battalion is probably stronger than the 4th Australian Brigade because it's a difference between infantry and militia. We've got the New Caledonia Detachment, which is Free French militia, but they do have some reasonable artillery and guns and support units, so that'll be nice. They even have some 6-inch coastal guns, but that won't really come into play because he's not landing any troops coastally. We have 9 6-inch coastal guns from the 5th Royal Australian Artillery Regiment, which was brought in to prevent a Japanese landing at Nomaya. It did that, but it also comes with 27 militia sections, so we've got that. And then we've got a light anti-aircraft regiment, which I feel like kind of sucks. We didn't move them somewhere else because I assumed he was going to be pounding the hell out of this base as he kind of continued his attempt to overrun us on New Caledonia. But so far, he hasn't launched any air raids there. So I'm not sure what to make of that. But in any event, he does have troops at Nomaya. If he launches a determined assault this turn, he very may well take the base. We were really surprised. I don't know if we were surprised, but we were disappointed in how quickly our Indian Brigade at Comac fell. Now, fortunately, I don't think he's been able to lift those troops out of Comac and bring them to Nomaya yet. But he had elements of a regiment that were in at Lafoa, so he might actually have a strong enough force to overwhelm Nomaya. I'm not really sure. Sea Hurricanes, I don't think we have much in the way of reserves. We'll take a look at Singapore in a minute where we have... Well, actually, we don't have Sea Hurricanes at Singapore, but we'll take a look at our carriers in a minute. You know, one of the things that Tortuga recommended was pulling troops off the front line, so like making sure that you don't have a ton of troops like right along the coast and pulling them back to interior bases. So we're going to do that with this 2nd Cavalry Brigade. We're going to pull them out of Brisbane and we'll move them back a hex. You know, we've got other troops that are moving into strategic mode as well. We're going to have the 1st Motor Brigade and the 3rd Motor Brigade move into strategic mode. So we've got some pretty good units in Australia. The 1st and 3rd Motorized Brigades have really poor experience, but they've got decent morale and they're good units. They're non-militia units. So we want to make sure that we can rail these anywhere as they're needed. 6th Australian Brigade is part of the 4th Infantry Division, which is all kind of all over right now. We issued a lot of orders to troops in Australia. I think what we're looking at doing is we're looking at building up a bunch of troops at Wagga Wagga, which is located on, it's sort of in the interior a little bit, and it can rail to any strategic point on the Australian east coast. And we'll probably have some at Toowoomba as well. Meanwhile, we do have some tankers that are still unloading in Townsville. These guys actually are already done unloading. So let's go ahead and have these guys head north back toward the Dutch East Indies. It does make me a little bit nervous if he's got like any troops or any ships going after our cruisers there, that maybe they would detect these tankers. But I don't think stashing them in an Australian port is necessarily the safest route to go either. Put 2,000 more supply into Port Moresby. Let's do that now rather than continuing to load up supply at a base that obviously doesn't have much supply. So we're going to move these cargo ships to Port Moresby. The remaining tankers at Townsville will continue unloading their fuel. They can't dock because the port's actually too small for the tonnage they have. But we are putting a decent amount of fuel into Australia. The thing is, the Australian economy really chews through a lot of fuel. We've got 75,000 at Melbourne. We've got 123,000 at Sydney. We've got 58,000 at Brisbane. So that tells me pretty confidently that we've got enough fuel. You can see all of these tankers either on their way to Oosthaven or on their way back to Perth to unload. We've got 16,000 fuel unloading presently. Let's go disband these guys in port at Perth. We'll go ahead and disband these guys as well so they can repair in harbor. And we've got these guys here that I think are docked. No, they're not. All right, we'll go ahead and dock them. And they're unloading 16,000 more fuel at Perth. Perth has 83,000 fuel. 16,000 about to unload. Some of these guys already arrived, actually. This tanker already unloaded at Balikpapan. 21,000 fuel there. These guys already unloaded 17,000 fuel there. 8,000 oil. These guys already unloaded. 25,000 oil there. Already unloaded and on their way back. 6,000 fuel there. So you can see quite a lot of convoys moving in and about the region. Meanwhile, we've pulled the Hermes back toward Batavia, pulled it out of Surabaya. And the plan with the Hermes is to link up with the Royal Sovereign and the Indomitable when they come south. So the Hermes is really just a strike carrier in the sense that all it has is swordfish. And that's all that's available on the ship, and for whatever that's worth. Actually, those guys have 20% bombing accuracy. These guys have 56% bombing accuracy? Wow. Huh. They suck off the carrier, though. They're not carrier trained. They're carrier capable. Nothing really changing in and around Surabaya, though. Let's see here. We've got these ships which are loading fuel at Oosthaven. They actually had a pretty good load up on the first turn here. They are docked, so that does help. They loaded 10,154 fuel of a potential 26,000. These two Tan-class fleet oilers, which are really pathetically small, both loaded their entire complement, while the larger tankers only loaded about a third. So I'd imagine we've got about 2 more days, maybe 3 more days with these guys before they load up their full 26,000 complement. You can see here that we've got 19,000 left at Oosthaven, 37,000 at Palembang. We do have a Japanese submarine spotted here, moving northwest. I had hoped we had sunk it, but it looks like we do still have intel on this guy over here. I guess it could be a different submarine also. If we look at the actual ship sunk last turn, nothing according to our intelligence. So I guess we didn't sink that Japanese submarine. Although that could be wrong. Again, there's fog of war. We've got these corvettes here. They are of the Flower class. All of them. So they're all British corvettes. And they're all reasonably good at ASW. Let's actually go ahead and send these guys over here just to make sure, like, if we've still got the enemy over there. Okay. ASW patrols. This Dutch sub has reloaded. So actually, now that it has reloaded its torpedoes, we're going to send it over toward Truk. We've been trying to flood the region of Truk with submarines as much as we can. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're also going to change its home port away from Singapore to something a little bit more appropriate at Townsville, maybe on the Australian coast, since it's a little bit closer to Truk. So we'll go ahead and send it over there. We've still got a nice cordon of submarines. We've issued orders for a bunch of different submarines to move in a bunch of different ways. You see these guys are all moving down toward Truk. You can see we've got a bunch of subs already off Truk. Assuming these are Japanese ASW patrols. So we're going to go ahead and move this guy down here. We're going to change his move off of full, because I think whatever we were chasing probably made it back into port already. Okay, I want to get them a little bit further away from Truk itself. I don't want to be susceptible to Japanese ASW aircraft patrols in short range right off Truk. There's no reason for that. Cruise speed for that guy. Okay, so both of them are moving that way. I think we've got some SS's. The Nautilus, oh shit. You're not going to make it back, buddy. You're not going to make it anywhere. Can you make it to anything? Shit. This sub is like totally out of fuel. He is fucked. Johnson might actually be the closest base. Why did you run out of... Why were you running? Nautilus! We're going to lose a sub just out of sheer stupidity. Unless... Here, let's do this. Let's go ahead and meet this task force. I don't know if we can, like, refuel at sea with submarines between subs, but we're going to try. So we're going to have him move over there and meet up with that task force. Hopefully he can share some of his fuel and get the Nautilus back to sea. Because at this rate, he's going to run out of fuel just north of Ponap. Okay, so that's the situation there. If we move south to New Zealand, we've got some tankers on their way toward Australia. I don't like the idea of these guys quite so far north, so let's actually reroute them. I wonder if we can reroute them around the southern tip of New Zealand. Or we can at least do that. We'll route them through New Zealand. And it doesn't really make them much less fuel efficient, I guess. So these guys are moving back toward Los Angeles. Okay, so those two tanker convoys are going in different directions. This guy's going to Melbourne as well. And these guys are almost unloaded at Auckland. We unloaded quite a bit of fuel at New Zealand. We've got 58,000 down in Auckland to power the economy there, plus a little bit of fuel on all the other bases as necessary to power their economies. So there's that. These guys have naval attack orders. Actually, they've got ASW attack orders. Let's do naval attack and recon. Is there... No. Rest. So we'll set some of you guys out to search. We'll set some to ASW. Set their altitude to 5,000. These are basically Australian versions of the Wildebeest, except they don't carry torpedoes, unfortunately. The other unit here only has 3. We'll also do naval attack. And we'll do 10 of each. Apparently I can't draw reinforcements, though. This guy's... Huh. Not even. Set his altitude to 10,000. So hopefully if anything comes sailing down... I don't know. I don't know what to expect from XTRG based off his comment. I'll check in with the chat in just a minute, guys. Meanwhile... Not really going to change a lot with these guys. If we look at the Singapore front, there's still no... still no Japanese advance here. Not toward Johor Bahru. We've pulled most of our units out of Johor Bahru to the south, to Singapore itself. So there's that. Quite a few engineers down here, too. I'm sending most of these guys to combat because I don't think we'll survive long enough to run out of supplies. So I'd rather make sure they get their combat up as much as possible. You can see quite a few base forces. Lots of engineers down here in Singapore. 212 engineers with 23 engineer vehicles. We can actually just set them all to... not defend. We can set them all to combat if we just do this. Do we have some units that can form divisions? The 8th Australian Division. Nope. We've got some troops elsewhere, so we can't do that. That kind of sucks, because that unit's going to get destroyed. What about the Indian Brigade here? Okay, so we can build the 9th Indian Division. They'll fight more efficiently if we combine all the different brigades into that Indian Division. So now we've got the 9th Indian Division, which has 288 assault value with Indian and British infantry sections. It's in generally good order. Looks like only 36 Indian battalions or sections are disrupted. 36 British infantry, nothing's disrupted there. Their artillery's pretty well disrupted, so that's unfortunate, but overall that's okay. The 28th Gurkha Brigade can also reform into the 11th Indian Division as well, which gives us another very strong Indian unit here. So we've got 261 assault value in that Indian Division. And 27th Australians already said that division is not all here. 22nd is part of the 8th as well, but that unit's not all here. I think that's it in terms of units that can combine. Got some heavy AAs. We've got some base forces with some assault value. But overall, mainly those two divisions are about all we can make up of larger organizations. You can see here our total strength at Singapore is about 911 assault value, which is not very good. The Japanese easily have probably 3 divisions coming down on us, I would assume, unless they've stripped forces out of the region. So it's not a very good defensive position. Now, we do have a little bit more up north in Johor Bahru, and most of that's coming south between the 3rd Cavalry Regiment, 1st Manchester Battalion, the SSV Brigade, which is pretty well disrupted but is very well prepared for Singapore. And then the 1st Malay and 2nd Malay Battalions. I think we should probably actually order these guys. Their experience is moderate, but their morale sucks at 26. We'll move them south as well. There's not really any feasible fight we can put up at Johor Bahru, but I also don't want to completely abandon it, so we'll leave 1 battalion behind just to serve as a blocking force. We've got 49,000 supply at Singapore. We're still building more forts. We're up to level 3 fortifications. We might get to level 4 before they arrive. Maybe not. It seems like we're building pretty slowly. I know, historically you would generally want to defend Johor Bahru because Singapore itself is a pretty poor defensive position. But the way this game works, this is actually an urban environment, which makes attacking very difficult. You get a ×4 defensive bonus. Plus, the level of fortifications at Singapore is much stronger than Johor Bahru. So at the end of the day, you're better off defending at Singapore than Johor Bahru because of that, because you get a much stronger defensive bonus. We issued some orders last turn for some units to move into Burma. Nothing's really changed there this turn. We are unloading a fair bit of supply at Rangoon. We're up to 74,000 supply. We've got a bunch more that's coming off some transports at the moment. Various tankers and transports in movement. Some amphibious units. We're trying to go pick up the Australian Infantry Division that just arrived in Aden, the 6th Australian Division. This guy's our best unit on the map. 72 experience, 74 morale, almost 500 assault value. Those guys are crack troops. We'll leave that destroyer there. It's going to act as escort for the transports when they eventually do arrive. The air combat here, the 93rd Task Force, the Indomitable, and the Royal Sovereign. Bleed Purple 10 bonus. Bleed Purple. I don't know what that means, J Street, but thank you for the bits. So we've got the Royal Sovereign and we've got the Indomitable coming south. The Indomitable, our first British fleet carrier. They have a really pathetic air wing. They've got 17 Albacore 1s, which are biplane torpedo bombers, so that's nice. But their replacement pool is very weak. They've only got 4 in the replacement pool. They've then got 9 Fulmer 2s, which are fighters, which are like twin-seat fighters, I think. But they're not very good fighters. I think they might be durable. They actually have a decent maneuverability compared to some of our crappy early war fighters, but they're really not great at fighting. Although they do have a shit ton of 30 cals, 8 of them. But they're not going to go toe-to-toe with a 0. There's 6 replacements in the replacement pool there. And then we've got 6 Hurricanes with 3 in reserve. We've got 4 in the replacement pool. And that's kind of our best fighter here. You can see the maneuverability score is considerably higher. Also has 830 caliber machine guns, and has a pretty good experienced, moderately experienced, I guess, air crew at 54. These guys are decent, but the one thing you got to be careful with is your replacement pool for these aircraft sucks. You get a couple to start, but you burn through them so goddamn fast. And so if you use British carriers in a consistent manner and you use them in combat frequently, you will burn through your air units. You do not get sufficient replacements of British airframes for the fleet, for the carrier wings, until late 43, early 44. It's a very slow replacement rate on the aircraft that are on these carriers. So they're kind of like glass, glass houses. They look all pretty. They've got a great ability to take punishment. So I guess the glass house is a bad reference or a bad analogy. But the problem is that it's basically you've got one shot, and once you blow that, you kind of you're not coming back for that from a considerable period of time. So if there's a decisive carrier engagement, it might make sense to include them, because then you can take a bit of punishment. They have armored flight decks, so they're really good at taking Japanese bombs and staying in action, or at least not sinking. But in terms of their aircraft, you're probably only going to use them in one carrier action, so you need to make sure that that the one you use it in is sufficient. Now, it looks like we might have enough replacements for maybe 2 carrier actions, because their air wings are so pathetic. But anyway. All right. That's enough of me jibber-jabbering there. What about Prince of Wales? How's she doing? Prince of Wales, still 56 float damage, still slowly making its way back to Cape Town, where when she gets there, she will probably be under repair for a year and a half. So by the time she gets there, looks like there's 19 days left, so it'll be mid-February. I would not expect to see her back in action until August, maybe, of 1943. So probably like 3 or 4 years in real lifetime. But at least she didn't sink. I mean, she had a lot of victory value there that wasn't sunk. Meanwhile, we've got the Repulse, which is currently repairing at Cape Town. Doing okay, about 3 more months out of action for the Repulse. No upgrade there anytime soon. So once she's back, then we can kind of use her as a fast escort for some of our carriers. We're loading up some supplies with some of our ships here that are based out of Cape Town. And they're going to go to Rangoon. We want to chock Burma full of as much supply as we can. And to that effect, we're going to go ahead and we're going to form another task force of 12-knot cargo ships, so some slow cargo ships. I'm guessing the port is already... Oh, wow. This task force can be huge. You can see here we've got 15,000. We got quite a bit in the way of tonnage that we can load up here. All right. We'll have 1 destroyer escort this convoy. I don't think there's much of a risk of there being large numbers of Japanese submarines between us and them. So we're going to go ahead and load them with 74,000 supplies, and then we're going to send them to Rangoon. The other thing you have to keep in mind is you want to chock Rangoon full of as much supply as you can for 2 reasons. One, Burma eats quite a bit of supply. So if you can get as much there before the Japanese really start attacking, it's ideal. 2, there are good rail networks in Burma that will link most of your other bases, but those connections will break down pretty quickly once the Japanese decide to flank these positions here. You can see there's quite a bit of exposed rail lines. Now, you have a little bit of redundancy built in because there's roadways that'll transfer supplies north here. So they can cut this rail line, but you can still transfer supplies north. But also, if you cram Rangoon with a ton of supplies, then gradually over time, and this is not quickly, but over time, some of that supply, just because of the way the nature of the supply mechanic works in the game, will head east, and it will filter into China. And once it's into China, obviously that is very helpful for your various Chinese forces, because, you know, you've got a lot of Chinese forces there. You want to make sure that they've got sufficient supply. And generally speaking, they don't have sufficient supply. But if you can give them a little bit of extra supply from Rangoon, you know, any supply helps. I think you get something like 2,000 supply a day in Kunming as long as you have the Burma Road open. That just automatically generates, but you can supplement that with even more supply coming through Rangoon very slowly and inefficiently. Meanwhile, as we move to China, we can see here that the Japanese have put a force astride our position at Pingxian. It looks like they've got one unit here. We have 1,200 assault value in various units here that are moving, and it looks like the Japanese are trying to kind of cut this force off from getting westward to Xiantan or Henyang. I'm not sure if I want to attack. It says he only has one unit here. The question is, how strong is this unit? If it's a full Japanese infantry division, then attacking it is probably ill-advised because he will probably just crush us and drive us back. In that case, it might make more sense just continuing to try and move east to the cities of Henyang and Singatan, because again, if we can get an additional 1,200 assault value in these two cities along the river, then if he tries to flank Changsha, it'll be that much more difficult. But if this is one exposed Japanese division or brigade, more likely, that we can ravage, obviously we want to do as much damage to the Japanese in China as we can, and I think we've got a moderately. None of these troops are dispersed. None of these troops are tired, so it might not be a terrible idea to attack him, and maybe that'll throw off some of his movements. Meanwhile, you can see he's bringing up a ton of reinforcements. He's got 115,000 units at Changsha. He's bringing up additional troops here. He's kind of made a comment that Changsha, he's intending for it to be his Stalingrad in China. Well, our Stalingrad in China. And so that's something we've got to be mindful of, because he's got a lot of men there. We've got a reasonable number of men there too, but our ability to supply any massive force like that is going to be seriously limited. I don't actually want to move those guys there, so let's cancel that movement. I need to keep some considerable troops on my flank, so we're going to do that. We're going to keep these guys here. We'll go ahead and rest for now, because I don't think he can attack there this turn. I think he's got to get troops here. So we've got about 500 assault value on that flank. That's good for about a division. We've got another similar amount here. We've only got one level fort here, which is a little bit of a concern. Henyang's a little bit better positioned with level 2, actually almost to level 3 forts. This Chinese corps is required to be there for garrison reasons. We've got these troops all falling back toward Changsha. We've got about 1,200 additional troops here at Yichang. He's got troops here. 2 divisions, I think. Yichang should be able to hold against 2 divisions with level 2 forts with 1,200, assuming they have sufficient supplies. We've got the Flying Tigers north here at Chang'an, where we've got most of our air support. I'm assuming he's probably going to bomb Changsha, so it might make some sense to put some long-range cap over that. In fact, let's do that. We'll do a sweep long-range cap here. We'll set all fighters at this base to that. 17,000 feet is probably ideal. Maybe the other 8 will go a little bit higher. At 20. Actually, let's set these guys. I don't want all of them at 20. I want a small number at 20, and then we'll set the others at 15. These aircraft do better at lower altitudes in terms of maneuverability, but also if his bombers are coming in low, there's a chance you don't intercept them if you set your cap too high. Okay. Let's rebuild this air unit here. And can these guys be rebuilt? No. Okay. I think we may also want to move these Hudsons out to another base after they attacked last turn. So let's move them out to Quillith, because again, I'm assuming he's going to attack Changsha. So there's no real point in continuing to station our aircraft there. They're just going to take casualties. Yeah, so let's pull these guys back to Quillith, which is along the railway line, so we can actually pull all of our aircraft out of Changsha. We did a little bit of disruption or a little bit of damage to his troops there last turn. I'm kind of tempted to bombard his troops. It'd be an interesting idea to bombard his troops. The problem is I don't have a lot of supplies, so if we do launch a bombardment attack, that would probably burn a lot of supply to no real effect. Okay, Okay, so we pulled those air units back. He's not pursuing in northern China. I'm assuming... Oh, he's got 46 units here at Luoyang, and I thought he was making his entire effort at Changsha. Yowza. Oh, we've got some air units, I think. How far is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do any of these air units have a range of 9? Their extended range is 7. No, those are fighters. Fighters. Fighters, damn it. Where can I base these guys out of? So Chongqing is too far in the rear because it's one of the few places where we actually have sufficient supply for much of anything. We could base them out of Quyang. The airfield there is what? 3? We do have some aviation support. Fly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We can't quite get there. Do we have aviation support here? No. I'm trying to see if there's any way to bring air supply in. 1, 2, 3. It's 1 shy of their extended range. Damn it! I really need to be able to bring supply forward to this base. I mean, we can move it via the rail line, but I don't... It's not trickling forward very effectively in any event, which is kind of concerning. Let me check in with the chat here real quick. Yeah, I mean, we have HQs at Changsha. They should pull supply. You can see we've got 4 HQs. I think almost all of the units in here are attached to the various HQs in this city. So they should pull supply. I mean, they have sufficient supply right now. If you look here on the right, none of these units are red. It's just the reserve supply is very low. Okay. Anyway, that is the Chinese theater. We looked at Burma. I don't really have a lot to do on a lot of these locations because I did most of my orders last turn. We're unloading a lot of fuel and actually some aircraft cargo into India here. What's on these? Oh yeah, we've got 30 Hurricanes, by the way, showing up here at Karachi, which I'm going to rail forward to the front. So we're going to have some Hurricanes that'll be at Rangoon before too long. So we should have 30 Hurricanes at Rangoon in addition to the Buffaloes that we already have there, and some Fortresses that we already have there, etc. Do we have other units that we want to fly out there? Those Buffaloes are still recuperating. We also moved some Hurricanes into Singapore, so we've got 11 of them here. They're all currently stood down. The morale of the fighter units in Singapore is ridiculously high. Let's move these Hurricanes into Singapore. The one risk is if he does go for like Swing Kang here on our flank, as it's kind of evidenced from his air attacks, he could very potentially cut off our line of retreat for those air groups and stick them or get them stuck in Singapore. So we kind of have to keep an eye on that. All right, so we pulled those out of Palembang. So we've only got a few air units left in Palembang. Swing Kang, you can see here we've got 8 ready Flying Tigers, which are going to fly back to Singapore. Because you could see he was escorting with like 40 zeros over Swing Kang. So we want to get those out. The other guys are going to have to hopefully repair on the ground. I also want to get these 6 Catalinas out of here. So we'll set these guys to Medine, because I think they can actually fly off the ocean. So we can move them up here, and we can do recon on the Japanese forces moving forward. I don't really see, like, where are most of his troops? It seems like he's really light in forces here, but it may just be because I haven't really spotted anything yet. I haven't been doing much in the way of recon. I want to get most of those aircraft out of Swing Kang, given that's what he's clearly going for. These Dutch bombers, I think, will transfer to Palembang. If he wants to bomb Palembang, be my guest. Feel free to destroy your oil that you need when you eventually will take it. Are we building Palembang up fortress-wise? Up to level 2 forts, working on level 3. These Hudsons, these guys are restricted. Can we unrestrict them? Like, is there any value in unrestricting them? That's the other thing, is I don't really know. We got 65 political points. I think we're better off not unrestricting them at this time, but we'll at least fly them back to Batavia to get them out of there. What do you mean it's unreachable? You for sure can get there. There you go. All right, so we're pulling our air units out of Batavia, so he's going to continue to hit that to less effect, hopefully. This PBY detachment, these guys have a crazy long range. I would love to get these guys up to Rangoon if I can. Yes! Wow, that's a long flight. Mainly because I want to get these guys out of Rangoon, and then what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to rebuild them up in Rangoon, and then I'm going to run recon over whatever he has here. He's got one unit, but I don't know what is in that unit. So I would like to kind of recon it and see what he has. I don't want to tip our hand in how, all these bombers that we have up here quite yet, because I'd rather build that force up. We've got 74 aircraft at Rangoon. What's the air support situation? We got 78 there. So it's almost maxed out. I think we're moving... Are we moving other air units south to support? Where are these guys moving? Nowhere. They're here. They're where they're going. And then this AVG unit is unpacking. Okay. All right. Let's see. Anything else we can pull out of here? A few more seagulls. The seagulls are kind of worthless. Their range is so shitty. Let's move them down to Batavia. They can reach there, so that's good, I guess. Let's stand them down. So he's essentially going to bomb and shut down Swing Kang. He hasn't quite shut it down, but he'll probably shut it completely down this next turn. The good thing is when he eventually takes it, that's all damage he's got to repair. So have fun doing that. Okay, we'll move these guys to Palembang. And then... these guys will move out that way too. The one thing about Swing Kang is it's an ideal place to bomb like Meersching from, but, it is what it is. Meanwhile, Batavia, we had Swordfish. I don't know where we moved our torpedo bombers to. Did we move them to Sorbet? We did move our Wildebeest to Sorbet. So let's kind of focus on getting them further back. I think they are unrestricted. So where do we have... There's no air capacity there. I can't really... Do we have cargo ships here? I need some cargo ships that can load them. Let's do this. Let's form a cargo task force. All these guys are kind of slow. So we're going to form a cargo task force here. We're going to get some destroyers, patrol boats, minesweepers. We're going to pull all these guys out of Oosthaven, and we're going to send them down to Surabaya, where they're going to load up with some of those air units, and then they're going to head south to Australia. Assuming they get to Surabaya, I think we can probably get out. And if they run into Japanese submarines along the way, well, there's nothing in them right now, so whatever. Yeah, so we'll do that. Meanwhile, our carriers are currently kind of chilling in Pearl, so I haven't really decided what to do with them yet. I've been a little bit uneasy with doing much with my carriers. We've got the Saratoga, the Lexington, the Enterprise, and the Yorktown, all just hanging out at Pearl Harbor, kind of being like, hey, what's up, guys? We're here. But they're not really doing anything. And I don't really know what to do with them. I think moving them to the South Pacific might be a little bit risky, given that's the direction his carriers are going. The thing is, I don't, like, if he moves the Kido Butai somewhere else, then I probably should be able to exploit that, or I want to be able to exploit that. You don't generally want to operate all your carriers in the same task force for various reasons. The game kind of punishes you for that. Thank you very much for the follow there, Cold Steel. I think actually what we're going to do is we're going to leave them in port for a few more turns while these heavy cruisers repair, or just kind of regularly. Okay, so that's done. Meanwhile, we were loading up some troops in San Diego. I think they may already be on their ships. So yeah, we've got 3,244 troops. We've got 12,158 equipment, 13,000 supply, and these guys are on their way to New Zealand. It's the 2nd Marine Regiment, the 101st U.S. Base Force, and the 2nd U.S. Marine Tank Battalion as well is on its way. So just had a bunch of troops load up in San Diego and on their way for the front. Meanwhile, in Canada, we're loading these troops on. So, yeah, you guys are going slow as hell. You're docked up and everything. Oh, I guess they're switching over to strategic mode, aren't they? Yeah, so that's why they're loading slowly. We're loading up the Edmonton Fusiliers and the Brockville Rifles, 2 battalions of Canadian troops. The 1st Irish Fusiliers are also there, but they're militia, so that's fine. And then the 2nd Canadian Scottish Battalion. I can't change them right now, but eventually that's all going to form the 13th Canadian Brigade, which is going to move to the front as well. Meanwhile, U.S. East Coast, what came, there were some units that arrived there, weren't they? Ooh, they're Pacific. Pacific Fleet. Nice. I don't see withdraw dates on them either. The American Infantry Division, when, are these guys? These guys are on West Coast HQ. Oh, that hurts. 700 to switch their headquarters. Man. I really need the American Infantry Division. That is a great infantry division if we can get it. All right, well, let's do this. We've got these 2 new infantry regiments. They just arrived. We're going to set them up to strategic move, and then we're going to move them to the West Coast, because that's 2 infantry regiments that we really can use. We've also got the 1st Marine Raiders, which are also a member of the Pacific Fleet, the Bobcat Seabees, and the 1st United States Air Wing Base Force. All of these units are West Coast, so we can strategically move all of these units to the West Coast and get them prepared to move for the front. So they're going to move to San Diego via rail as soon as they are, as soon as they're able to, as soon as they're loaded up. We're going to set everybody else to do that, and then we'll just go ahead and kind of cancel these. Well, these guys can't move. But the rest of these units are all going to go for San Diego. Why are they not all going to go for San Diego? I ordered them all to go to San Diego. Set all to follow. Okay, so all these guys are going to go to San Diego eventually, and so that's some nice new units, the 132nd and 182nd. Their experience is low, but they've got good morale, and they're good American units with good equipment. And so we're obviously going to use them in the Pacific Campaign, and it'll be great once they arrive. and I'm gonna hope that maybe there's some way the game will let me like merge. I'm hoping that maybe if I merge 2 regiments with the Pacific Fleet headquarters with a regiment with a different headquarters, if the game lets you do that, maybe that'll just automatically switch the headquarters of the unit that's not to the Pacific Fleet. Because I really want to build that infantry division. The Admirals Infantry Division was a famous infantry division from the Pacific Campaign, a storied unit that we'd be remiss to wait for like 5 months till we can use them. I know I've been going for about an hour and 15 minutes. I don't really have a lot else to show this turn, guys. I think maybe we'll see some interesting stuff next turn, given how excited XTRG was to have the next turn occur. I don't have a lot else to do. I need to figure out if I'm going to attack with these guys. I haven't really decided yet. In terms of ships that we are about to get, ship availability, ETA. I mean, I can tell you one thing for sure. A lot of cargo ships, because that's how this game works for the Allies. Looks like we actually get the battleships Missouri and New Mexico in San Francisco next turn. So we get more slow battle wagons that are basically fuel guzzlers. We get the destroyer Morris in Balboa. We get, in 2 turns, we get a couple of cargo ships, and we get the troop transport Santa Elena. We get 3 submarines in 4 days, so more shitty Mark 14s. We get the light cruiser Sumatra in 6 days. We get a tanker, the British Chemist, in 8 days. Battleship Idaho in 10 days. So we get 3 battleships in the next 2 weeks. Some mine layers here in the next 2 weeks. A couple more tankers here. The battleship Revenge in a little bit over 2 weeks. A British battleship there. Some more cargo ships, some more troop transports. And then in about a month, we get the Ramillies, the Resolution, as the British start transferring sufficient or substantial reinforcements to the Pacific. Presumably that's in response to the fall of Singapore that happened historically happened shortly before the dates that these guys are set to arrive. Some more submarines. Yeah, so I don't think we get another carrier for a while. Our next carrier arrives in 49 days. That's the USS Hornet in the eastern coast, so about a month and a half. And then we get the Formidable in 53 days in Cape Town. So in 2 months, we'll have 2 more fleet carriers, although one of those is kind of the mediocre British fleet carriers with their... This one has 16 Martlets and 18 Albacores on it. Yeah, the Hornet and then the Wasp in June of 42. The Wasp will be the last American carrier that we get until the Essex in 43. So I think, in about a month and a half, we'll be in a lot better position as we get that 5th American fleet carrier, combine it with the 2 British fleet carriers, and we will have a total of 6 carriers, light on the air, definitely still outnumbered by the Japanese, but enough to do some damage, enough to make them think. That's kind of the situation there. With that being said, guys, and I will catch you guys next time. Until next time, though, this is the Historical Gamer, as always, saying thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'm out.